Welcome to Catalytic Curiosity. I am your host, Jaymes with a Y O'Farron with Catalytic Conversations. I serve remote professionals and hybrid organizations with coaching, consulting, and training to help them reconcile humanity and technology, leading to healthier, digitally integrated lives and teams. On this podcast, I am embarking on a journey of discovery to unearth the roots of digital mastery and maturity beyond mere adulting. I interview insightful and intriguing experts exploring how we can develop sage-like maturity with intention in today's digitized world. Today's episode brings Jared Polak to the table to talk about work-life balance. Jared is my business coach, and I am so honored to have him on the show today. Jared Polak is an entrepreneur who accelerates the business of small business leaders. He ensures that anyone who works with them takes full advantage of the Entre Results atmosphere. Jared has read all the books and has gone through every training, yet his genius stems from first-hand experiences working and living in the small business arena, which bolster his ability to teach and learn from others. Jared uses his knowledge to bless the lives of friends, family, and those whose companies he serves. Jared is always learning, which allows him to adapt to whatever comes his way. He draws on thousands of hours of experience in coaching, consulting, and training. Although younger than his contemporaries, Jared is an old-timer in terms of experience. A firm believer in work-life balance, he's selective about the number of clients he takes to ensure time for his family. Work-life balance is actually one of Jared's core beliefs. The number of clients who asked for help in this area led him to write EntreBalance, an informative book designed to inspire people to work on their personal lives as much as their businesses. Jared's second book, EntreBusiness, covers 7 important business principles that are crucial for success. He also founded the Entre Results Academy, which allows business owners to access coaching at an affordable price. So in this episode, we talk about work-life balance, we talk a bit about his books, and we talk about how to intentionally develop a strong community and sense of meaning around you, and how to develop that for your own mental health. Again, welcome to Catalytic Curiosity. Welcome, Jared, to Catalytic Curiosity. I've been really excited to have you on here because you are my business coach, which I think is really awesome, man. So I get to have one of my own mentors on here to share some of your wisdom. And you are a entrepreneur extraordinaire because you have all these things that start with Entre. So Entre Results is your main company, right? And then you've got a bunch of other stuff. You've got a couple of books, EntreBalance and EntreBusiness. You've got a bunch of different academies and different kinds of meetups and mastermind groups and all kinds of stuff. You just put Entre in front of all of them. It's a great way to do branding. So Jared, thank you so much for being on here. What got you into entrepreneurship itself, and what have been some of the challenges that you've overcome in that journey?
Man, first of all, awesome to be here, Jaymes. Certainly, it's a pleasure. The more time I can spend with people I care about, the better my life is. And really, at this point in my life, that's really what I do: is I spend time with people that I want to spend time with. And as you mature in your business, you have the ability to do that. Some people don't ever choose to do that. They just choose to be miserable and grow a business and make more money, and their life is horrible. But like, why would you do that when you're?
I know people actually do that. They actually choose to do things that make them miserable. Like, why?
Doesn't make any sense. Well, that's probably a deeper podcast.
Indeed.
Indeed. But yeah, I wasn't born an entrepreneur. I wasn't born with that thought process. And again, I think it's great working for somebody else. I think there's honor in working for someone else. And I always grew up with this mentality of go to school, get good grades. I was always hardworking, work for a company and work your way up the corporate ladder, essentially. And that's what I did, really, for the
standard American dream, right?
My career. And I do remember, though, that my first job out of college, a great company, but I was in the wine industry, which is it's cool for a lot of people to be in the wine industry right out of college. And I was selling wine for just a fantastic company, got trained a lot. But then I realized over Thanksgiving and over Christmas, the times where I wanted to be with my family or, just to have time off, I was working hard. I was working harder than I ever had been. And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? This is just not the path that I want to have for my life. And I was actually promoted from a salesperson to a sales manager. I was working my way up, but it didn't do it for me, even though it was a great company. And so then in 2006, the end of 2005, I decided to leave my job without any plan in place. And I decided to take off.
Sounds like you.
I know. There you go. I decided to take off and do some service-based projects with different Christian organizations and travel throughout the world. So again, no particular Christian denomination, but I was kind of really big into rediscovering my faith to some degree, and I wanted to live that out on a day-to-day basis. So I traveled the world for a year, did missionary work with different Christian groups, served orphans and widows, and built homes, and then I ran out of money, Jaymes. I ran out of money.
You started off with not having a plan and then running out of money. That those seem to go together.
And so the reality was, I was like, man, what do I want in life? Like, what do I want in life? And I was like, you know what? I want a reasonable amount of money, and I want a reasonable amount of time to do the things I'm passionate about and serve other people. And it's like, okay, what can I do where I can have a reasonable amount of time and a reasonable amount of money? And then I this was early on before coaching and consulting was certainly there, but coaching was new. And I started reading up on it. I was like, man, I kind of want to be a coach. I kind of want to be a life coach is what I thought about. And then a life coaching is honorable. You can make a lot of money. But at that time I was like, you know what, in order to be able to do the financial things that I wanted to have sort of business with life, business and life, and they're intertwined. But with business, there was a little bit more of a clear ROI for working with me. And so I like that. But then again, I never wanted to help someone create a business that would give them a bad life. And so I can combine the two. And really that year of missionary work, I learned entrepreneurship. I learned to do different things. And I really have grown as an entrepreneur since then.
That is awesome. I love that. And particularly like the motivation initially was finding a sense of balance where you had, it's like, I don't want to get overbalanced in this other direction. I want to recover a sense of balance and be able to spend time with my family and all these kinds of things. And I know so many people, when they start jumping into the freelance route, which is very common with web developers and technologists, where they like, well, I want a bit more independence in my life, and I want to get out of the the dungeon of the office and strike out, and they don't realize they're becoming an entrepreneur by doing that, becoming a freelancer, that solopreneur mindset. And that's one of the traps that's so huge and so common to fall into, is just working all the time, and they lose their family, they lose the holistic aspect of their life. And this is something that really happens nowadays a lot in the digital online world, is people are just losing that sense of touch with the people around them. Even though they're at home, they're not at home.
Yes.
Right. So what are some of the things that you've learned? I mean, you wrote a book, EntreBalance, about work on your personal life as much as your business. And what does that look? Talk a little bit about that. What was that? Well, what was writing the book journey about, possibly as well? But what spawned you to write about that in particular?
Well, it's interesting, and that's why I love everything I put out it's really about helping me first. Sometimes a lot of it's about helping me get better and grow. And when you think about the book EntreBalance, it's really about me and my life, although it's not specifically, it's a fictional story that has some principles about life. And it really was, the story is a great balance, because it's also about someone who was a workaholic and was losing his family. And it was all about this next step, this promotion. So certainly there was a lot in me in there, although it's a fictional story, and got to a certain point where something happened. I don't want to give the book away totally, but something happened that jarred him, that began to change the way he thought. And he this main character started going on a different path and slowly learning some things along the way to have it. And I'll give you the baseline of one thing that you have to have. And this is hard for people, but if you don't understand why you exist as a human being, why you're alive, why God created you, if that's the viewpoint you have, like I do, then it's going to be very difficult to find shalom and peace in your life until you have that discovered. So for me, a lot of it's about purpose. Then again,
your why.
My why. And I'll be totally transparent from a Christian worldview standpoint. I have mine. And so I'm not even saying it has to be yours, but until you've discovered what that is, and you're doing things that are outside of your purpose and your value system, there's going to be a sense of disconnect. It's just impossible to be content with life if you're living outside of that. So we can share and dialogue about a lot of little nuggets, a lot of practical things along the way. But the deeper thing is, why am I here? Why do I exist? And when I figured that out, and when that was more revealed to me, it changed everything.
Would you say that that's because it helps to provide a sense of perspective, where one thing in your life has a harder time consuming everything else when it's always able to be held in contrast to something bigger and more significant? So your work is not that why, and so it's harder for it to take over everything in that sense. Is that kind of, it helps create that sense of grounding in a sense to balance that out?
I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, grounding, it's the rock in which you build everything, and work is beautiful.
Yes.
And it's wonderful, and it's a part of purpose, hopefully, but it's not.
It should serve that purpose.
It's the thing. It's the thing that lives out the purpose. It's not the purpose itself, which is a big aha for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned in the story, the character encounters something, big and traumatic. It shifts things, which is how good stories work. Was there a particular moment in your life that mirrored that you drew inspiration from there? That was like a big, huge, like hitting the wall moment that really helped shift that experience for you?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple things that change things later on, really going on these trips and when you travel to, just say, Latin America, or you travel to a place like Haiti.
Oh my goodness,
you experience the world in a different way. You see things in a different way. And so certainly getting away from the normal routine and doing something bold like that and serving people, that in itself changes you. So that was certainly a part of the story a little bit, in regards to the main character ends up serving a community in a different country, building a water well, actually, which kind of random how it turns out. But I built water wells in different countries as well. So that's something that jarred me. But for me, I moved also, I moved from Missouri to Texas, didn't know anybody, started my job. And so I was alone. I never experienced loneliness before. Oh gosh, this might be a good segue.
Oh man, it is.
My discovery, because in 2003, out of college, I went and I worked in Houston, and I was lonely. I've never experienced loneliness before. I've never experienced that. I have great friends all around me my whole life, but when you go somewhere and it's outside of college, outside of sort of that community, and you're away from things and you're isolated, even if you're around people, there's a loneliness. And so I felt a deep sense of loneliness in my life. Well, simultaneously, let's just say I've discovered or realized who Christ was in my life at that time too. So there's certainly a spiritual aspect of it. So you had loneliness, you had the spiritual aspect hitting hand in hand, and that catapulted me to be a new creation to some degree.
I love that. Yeah, because loneliness really is a huge issue right now. And it is directly part of that balance where you've lost a huge part of what it means to be human, is to have those relationships and that community and that connection around us. So what did you do to resolve that? How do you intentionally set about networking and developing that community when you're feeling stuck, or particularly you're like, new place, don't know anybody? I just moved to Fargo, North Dakota in May, knowing almost nobody. Only people I knew there I had met on the previous trip over.
Sure.
And I dove in and was intentional about setting up community and building that network. But what was your experience in doing that? What are some of the things that you learned along the way?
Yeah. Well, I think as I was articulating my own why for life, spending time with people that they don't have to have the exact same why, but you're on a similar path together. So associating with people that are on a similar path together. I know a lot of times, maybe it's cliche, but if you want to know who you are, look at your 5 or 6 people that you spend the most amount of time with.
Absolutely true, though.
That's a good way to know who you spend time with. So I wanted to invest in connecting with other people that was around me. So that was something that I did as well. And it takes time. It's not a fast thing, but if you're not intentional, you're never gonna find that. And so I went out and connected with people, and that's kind of how I started the process.
Love it. But looking at and finding people, not just common interests, but a common path, those common values is really important. Are there like particular uh, ways in which you're able to find out about something? Is it like that instinct of like resonance with somebody, or are there particular like tactics or like conversations questions that you asked? Or
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think you hit it straight up because first of all, I love dialoguing with people that have totally different views of me
oh
too.
yeah,
So I enjoy
oh yeah, same.
conversations with people that are vehemently against what I believe, because we
Right,
can do it in a way that's respectful and it's fun, and that's how you learn and you
we learn.
grow. In fact, even the books I read, I think one challenge a lot of people face is they read, it's groupthink to some degree. You read
Mm,
what you want to read and you believe what you want to
mm,
believe. You can go deeper with that politically too or whatever, but it's
mm,
good to like read the other side, experience the other side. So I love people with different views and things like that.
mm,
However, when you talk about your inner core of friends, like your closest and closest friends, they might have different interests, but your purpose and your meaning have to be semi-significant. And so I think that just develops over time in terms of developing that. So in terms of tactics, I think uh, the things that I did was I like serving people. Well, let me just give you an example. My
yeah,
wife, for example.
there we go.
How
Great
did I meet my
example.
wife? Right, that's a good example. Well, my wife and I, we met, and the things that we like to do, we like to serve people. We like to do missionary work together. So like, if you like to serve people, if you like to help people, if you like to feed the homeless, for example. When my wife and I were first started dating, we spent well, actually, even after we got married, 3 years of our life serving people underneath a bridge in Houston, Texas. And every Wednesday night we'd go under there, and it was pretty amazing. And so,
Yeah.
like, certainly when you're doing those type of things, it's
Mhm,
powerful. But on a lighter note, I mean, I did intramural sports with people too. I played
mhm,
different sports, and I think connecting with people that way was a
mhm,
good thing to be in motion with people that are active.
mhm.
Uh, and really, like, for me, even though I liked the people at work, actually avoiding people that I worked with and meeting people outside of work was also very healthy for me. Because when I hung out with people at
Mm,
work, then we just talked about work all the time, at least for the people I spent time with. And then you sort of got in this rut where you're just, again, it's all about work all the time.
right.
And I didn't want to
You lose
be
that balance.
one-dimensional like that as well. The other thing that I did a good job of, which I think can be, well, I think my work forced me into this. And so I think this can be a challenge. Some people that move or are lonely, they live in the past a little bit too much. And I didn't do
Mm,
that, thank goodness. Like, some people are always traveling back to where they're from or traveling somewhere every weekend. Like, wherever you live, I just believe you plant your flag wherever you're at, like you're going to be there for
mm,
the rest of your life. Even if
mm.
you think you're going to move in a couple of years, no matter, like, you treat where you're at like you're going to be there for the rest of your life.
I love
And
that.
that changes the way that you interact with other people.
I love that. That's really, there's a huge sense that we've lost, and it's a sense of place, of anchoring and community that's local to us. And that's something that we really need as humans, to have that sense of connection around us. And if you shift that mindset, that expectation, creating those connections, will really change in that sense. I know here, people complain a lot about being in Fargo. And like, everywhere's better than Fargo, And I'm like, yeah, it is kind of the Siberia of America. Yes, we did move here on purpose, but there is a sense that because we moved here on purpose, right? Our mindset, the way we approach things here is so much different. Like, we go outside, we're like, oh my goodness, it's so cool. There's snow everywhere. It was like, oh my goodness, there's snow everywhere. Right? Like, I was watching the other day, and there's like those little tiny crystal flecks in this air. Like, the sky was like full of glitter. It was like a status effect in a video game or something, or like, it was gorgeous. Like, there's this beautiful light everywhere. And of course, it also meant that the roads were hazardous for driving on,
Yeah.
but it was beautiful and I really loved it. And I was just, bubbling over about it to my wife, like, this is so cool. And people forget to look at those things when they are frustrated and glum and depressed. I can't wait to get away from here. But wherever you are, if you look at, I'm here on purpose, even if you grew up there and you just happened, or you were forced to be there, if you choose, I'm here on purpose, that transforms your whole mindset. I
Yes.
love that.
Now that's powerful. When you talk about mindset, there's hours we can talk on the mind and how
Mm,
that works. But literally, you look at the snow and look at its beauty
Mm-hmm.
versus, oh, this is a bad situation. I can't get to where I want to go, or I'm stuck inside. I can't
Mm-hmm.
drive anywhere. Man, I get to be inside and read or
Mm-hmm.
communicate. Or man, I'm stuck inside, but my internet works, so I can talk to people and I
Right.
can call people. Or oh, wow, I'm inside, but at least I'm not outside. I have heat inside. Or wow, I have hot water. I mean, there's a lot. If you
Mm-hmm.
just consistently think
Gratitude.
about those things, the gratitude, and
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about, I don't know if this is necessarily work-life balance, but I'm just going to share this because
Yeah,
this is so paramount. Is I believe, you win the morning and you win the day, and
I
part
love
of that
that.
is 4 things that I do to win the morning, and
I've
I'm
had
I'm,
it.
I'm fairly consistent with it. And one of those 4 things is gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
I exercise every morning too. I get some motion going on. For me, I'm not in Fargo, so I go outside every morning and I run or walk 6 or 7 days a week. You run and walk. I pray every day. I'm thankful every day. And then the fourth thing, which it is about work-life balance, but it's about planning your day. So those are the 4 things I do in the morning, and plan what your day looks like, or
Mm-hmm.
at least review what your day looks like. And so you plan for the day, you pray. For me, some people meditate, do other things,
Mm-hmm.
exercise, and you say what you're thankful for. That sets you up to win that day,
Mm-hmm.
certainly.
Because you're setting up, because I think it actually is absolutely about work-life balance, because you're looking at all the different domains of your life and you're starting strong in each of those, right? Because you've
There you
got your
go.
spiritual component, or the prayer, the meditation. You've got your physical component with the exercise. You've got your vocational component with planning your day, the time component, and you've got the mental component, which is it's also spiritual, and it's also all these other ones. But it's that sense of programming your mind that this is what things I want you to think about and look for.
Sure.
You're setting that filter that changes how you see everything else from that point forward. You're looking for things to be grateful for.
It's so powerful. And I remember, in terms of being thankful, I many times, because I live in Houston, the fourth largest city in the US. And for a while, for many years, I ran my business out of what was called the Houston City Club. It's basically an indoor tennis club, like a social club, like fine dining, a really nice place. And I'm not accustomed growing up to going to like country clubs, but I remember I was overseas, and I forgot where I was in Latin America, and literally it was just hot and there was no AC, and we were just grinding it out. And I was thankful because I was prepared. But then I got back, and literally within 12 hours, you fly back. I'm sitting here at the city club. I have someone serving me. And it's just like, holy cow, we have it so good.
Mm.
Part of it is that contrast, that
Yeah.
comparison. And I don't want to downplay people's lives, because it's more than just things and money,
Right.
because you can have bad situations in your life and you can have a lot of money.
For
But
sure.
when you just think about just the daily provisions, I am not in need. And just to be thankful for literally the daily bread that you have, the daily food that you have, it just changes things. And it's hard to do.
Everything.
It's hard to do that every day. It's hard to do that consistently, but it doesn't accidentally happen. Being intentional about it does make a difference.
Absolutely. And having a time for it that's set in there. So when you have a strong morning routine, do you also have a strong evening routine to set up for that success of that morning routine that kind of recaps on your day and helps to see, like, reflecting on how balanced your day was?
Yeah, no, great question. Again, I'm just sharing some of my stuff for
Totally.
those listening, and everyone's a little bit different. When we kind of coach people, it's general process model, but at the same time, everyone's a little bit different. So let me just take a quick step back. Every 90 days, I get away for at least one day to think, to plan, to pray, to evaluate, to be away, to be alone sometimes too. Sometimes my wife and I get to go together. We have the business together. We might go away for 2 days. But literally, I think through every area of my life. When you talk about work-life balance, I think through the 8 different areas of life, to the business. So every quarter, I get away to kind of go deeper on thought, deeper on things.
Yeah.
And
Critical.
it's critical. And then usually once a month, it's not getting away, but a little bit more. And then every week, it's really on the Friday is where I really, the end of the day on Friday, really evaluate things, evaluate the week. But on a daily basis, I don't really evaluate every single day until the next day. And so,
In
so
that
what
morning.
I do, yeah, that morning. So So that's kind of my rhythm. I mean, some people, what I've done in the past, sometimes it works too, is by 4:55, essentially you plan your next, you plan your next day. So I still kind of plan the next day a little bit. And when I do that, I kind of review, but it's really the weekly thing is where I do most of my review for the week to
I like
see
that.
how everything worked. I mean, first of all, I want to brag on you for a second. You probably do that better than anyone else, is just your rhythms of planning and reviewing. And certainly the way you look at your own time is a paragon for everybody.
Yeah, I've been developing my systems for a while now. You're talking about having that structure of time, and my wife and I have been developing that same kind of structure.
Yes.
We do our weekly reviews on Sundays other than Fridays, but we do those. We have systems that we reflect back on those. We try and have some kind of trip or something where we get away once a quarter to do more general views. You have our annual review as well, looking back on a larger scale and setting up themes for years, quarters, half years, months, weeks, days. I kind of fractal it down. And yeah, I've been developing a really, really, it's complicated, but it works for me. It works for me. It's something I've been developing for a while for my morning routine, of all the different systems and rituals that I have in place of that and how it follows on from my evening routine. And I've been doing that successfully for a while now, and I'm really, really loving it.
Right.
Yeah. But I like how you're saying about how it's different for everybody, because that's one thing that I work with people that I coach is the personality, and seeing what their time scale is and relevant to their personality, and how frequently do they need to review. So like for myself, I need to review things more frequently than my wife does, because if it goes longer than a few hours, it falls off my radar, and so I don't have that as a sense of accomplishment past that time. So I'll get to the end of the day, I'm like, man, I didn't get anything done because I got it all done in the morning, but it was too far away for me to really feel it. And so having some kind of way for me to measure it and then review that regularly so it gets carried over really makes a big difference for me. And then same thing with weekly schedules. Like she reviews certain things weekly, I review some things daily because of that, because you have different time scales. So calibrating your reviews to make sure that you're finding that sense of balance in a pattern that fits for you, not just your favorite guy on YouTube, is really important.
Cool.
Have you you mentioned your wife, Amy, who's a lovely, amazing person and a great coach herself in her own right, and getting into this entrepreneurial journey, and also figuring out, how to find balance along the way. Yes. What are some things you've learned about how to connect with her during the entrepreneur challenge and being able to maintain that aspect of that relationship there through all those stresses?
Absolutely. Great question. Couple things would be, at the beginning, it was hard, very hard. And Amy actually tells great stories about this in her coaching, because she does a lot of communication coaching and communication with teams and family-based businesses, a lot of family-based businesses. She has this conversation, but
that's kind of her niche, right? Is working with couples doing business.
Exactly. So she tells us better than I do. But essentially, when we started the business 14 years ago, and we were married for about 14 and a half years. So like it all kind of started about the same time, and it didn't work out really well at the beginning in terms of working the business together. And so we actually decided to not do business together at the beginning, and then we re-engaged many years later. So that was a problem. And also when you're,
I love that though, because you communicated about it. You decided not to for this time.
Yes.
And you're able to come back again later.
Yes. And she eloquently puts, if we wanted to stay married, we needed to not work together. And so I didn't quite have it quite that extreme of you, but that's what she said. So, we believe marriage is for life, for us at least. And so we want to, obviously our marriage, well, I'll tell you what, it's priorities too.
Yeah,
your marriage comes to run your business. Like you prioritize, like if you think about even my priorities, like I love entrepreneurship, but like God, my wife, my kids, and then my business. I mean, really, like that's the priority of things. And that's just the way it is. And so when you have that lined out, your priorities, it makes decisions a lot easier. But to answer your question a little bit more with Amy, so again, she allows me to do this, but I take the lead. She lets me be the leader in both our home and in our business. And so there's a distinction of roles in each of those, and there's no lack of clarity of of different roles in each of those situations. But
Mhm.
with that responsibility, I'm here to serve her and
Mhm.
sacrifice my life for her, both in the business and personal. And so
Mhm.
hopefully she gets the better end of the stick of that deal, and hopefully
Great.
I'm leading with just listening and responding and always doing what's best interest for her. And so in
Mhm.
my mind, what's best interest for us in the business, well, I'll give you an example today. We
Mhm.
have a team meeting every day with all our coaches. She's there, and we're talking about the business. We actually had a meeting about our business finances at 10 o'clock this morning. So we have meeting rhythms just like any company. We have different roles and responsibilities just like any company. And actually, it's more important when you work with your spouse to have clearly defined roles.
Yeah.
And then personally, we do date nights twice a month, and I don't talk about work during those dates.
Mhm.
I'm actually the one that actually doesn't talk about work more than her. She actually talks about work more than I do. And so sometimes I'm like, hey, let's not talk about work during this time. So basically, you have isolated things where you don't talk about work
Right.
together. And then, we have every Sunday, we totally take off time. And so we do
Mhm.
family and we do church together and we just
Absolutely.
do family time together. And so we have that going on. And so the key is, but then again, it goes back to purpose. Like her and I are so in sync with why we exist as human beings and what we're here to
Mhm.
do. We're all on the same page there, that even when we do have communication differences or different preferences, either in business or life, we're able to navigate through those because those are less important to us than
Right.
the reason why we are.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And bringing this into like the digital world a bit too, because that's one of the things I remember struggling with. Uh, my wife and I, live in the same place, and I'm having all these meetings with people digitally, and I'm there, but I'm also elsewhere. I'm probably like halfway between here and Houston right now
Yes.
because because of Zoom,
Yes.
over in the interwebs, and
Yes.
she's doing things in the house and whatnot. So, but I'm not here with her, right? And it's really easy to get distracted and to all the meetings and all the stuff that's going on and get so my head out there in all of the digital things, and then not making the time to be intentional about regrounding myself, pulling myself back. Okay, I'm here with my wife right now, and we're going to go have lunch together. And I'm not thinking about the next Zoom meeting. I'm not thinking about this other thing. I'm thinking about her right in front of me.
Yes.
Right. How important that is.
Yes.
To be able to have that grounding, because I think that's something that ties directly into that sense of balance, because we get imbalance between digital and physical too.
Yes.
Particularly for a technologist like me, it's
Yeah.
really easy to do that.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And on the same topic, but just transitioning just a little bit, because I'm not sure if we spoke about it yet,
Mm,
but the single folks out there, it's actually can be even
absolutely.
worse to
Yes.
some degree. And when I was talking about my early career, I was single, and
Mm,
that can become a major problem because there's not always a spouse or something you have to do to create balance. So you actually have
right.
to be more intentional about creating balance, because anyway, I just know that even as a
Absolutely.
single person, and then the other thing is uh, there's just sometimes mentally there's a different expectation. I don't know. It's not very
Mm,
unhealthy, especially actually if you work
yeah.
for somebody else, where I've seen businesses where there's like literally a different expectation for single people than for work people than for married people
I can
and
expect
with
you like
kids.
to be married to your job kind of thing.
Exactly. And it's
Mm,
very unhealthy,
yeah,
but
it's
it's
bad.
out there. It's really out there. And so I think you have to be extra diligent about having those boundaries and having
Yeah.
that balance in your own life if you are single. And by the way, I know we talked a lot about marriage. I love being married, but I love being single too. If you are single
Yeah,
right now, like I mean,
for sure.
listen, it's awesome. And so it's a great time, but it can be worse with balance
Yeah.
because you can just work 24/7 with no restrictions.
And going back to like finding your why and how that provides anchoring, because that's more important, right? The same thing happens when you don't have a family, because it's really easy to say, well, my wife, my kids are more important than my job. But if you don't have a wife or kids, you just have friends, it's harder to say that. Say my relationships and my community around me is more important than my job. That's a lot harder to say, and particularly pitch to a grumpy boss who's trying to get you to work overtime again and again and again. And so it's harder to do that, but realizing that, yes, for me to be a complete human, for me to be able to grow and be healthy and to be able to do my job effectively, I need to have that sense of community. I need to have that balance where I'm connecting with people around me. Like you said earlier, locally connecting with people around you, doing stuff together is so critical and so important that, it is more important than your job at that time when you need that. If you don't have it, it is more important to add that in and make sure that it's there.
Absolutely.
I love it. All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up here?
Well, great question. We talk about work-life balance. It's one thing I want to make sure that is distinguished is I do believe, first of all, that work is meaningful and work is a joy as well. Yes. It's just not the joy. It's not the most important thing. And just the word work-life balance is kind of an interesting, maybe an overused words in some degree, but the way I look at it is I'm a very competitive person and I'm a very driven person, and that's a problem if you're one-dimensional. Yes. Because what that can do is it can just drive you into being great at one thing. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people that have done some amazing things in the world or that have perceived to do amazing things in the world that are one-dimensional. And we look up to people that are one-dimensional, but I don't want their life because it can be a horrible life. I don't care if you are a champion of the NHL. If all you're doing is playing hockey and practicing at the expense of every single other thing, it can ruin your life. So you might be looked at as a champion, but really things are ruined. So I look at every element of my life and I'm like, man, I'd like to be a winner in faith. I mean, what does that look like to win in faith? What does that look like to win in health? What does that look like to win in friendship, to win in dating, to win in personal finance, to win in personal development? What is it like to win in fun? And you look at all these different areas and you evaluate them. Yeah. And work is one of those, 7 or 8 or 6 to 10 areas or however you categorize it. And it's made a big difference for me. So I just want to thank you. I guess final comments. I'm super thankful to be on this connection with
my pleasure. Honor.
Jaymes, and thanks for, a lot of people. I've been interviewed by a lot of people. I have a lot of friends that are out there, and some people, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And I know we're not perfect, and I know you're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, but I think we both genuinely believe in what we say, and it's not just word service. We literally believe this,
yes,
and we literally want to live it out. Whereas a lot of times, you just see things that are just this facade. So anyway, thanks for being real and authentic, friend, and I'd love to connect with you later on this.
Absolutely. I'm sure we're going to have many more episodes in the future. Thank you so much again, Jared, for coming on. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had your curiosity sparked to explore these subjects with greater awareness or gained a valuable insight along the way. Take a look at the show notes for links to where you can find Jared, leave reviews wherever you can, and make sure to join the conversation on my Discord. Remember, community is the catalyst that drives lasting transformation. I'll see you in the next episode of Catalytic Curiosity.